All right. So we got Louis Vandervalk. Did I even pronounce that right? Because I kind of like muddle the end of it a little bit because I don't know completely
No, you
how to
crushed it. You crushed
enunciate.
it. I still second guess your name every time I say it, even in my head. So I
It's
think you're doing all right.
A shown.
Ashon.
Yep,
I love it
that's it.
because that's how I say it in my head, and then I switch it to Acioni or something. I'm like, what's going on? And
No,
then I
trust your instincts. You're good.
all right, perfect.
Yeah. No, so I mean, it has been a long time. The last time was I on your podcast? The last time we really chatted,
Yeah.
like face to
Between
face.
working on the real thing was the podcast, and then I think we chatted a little bit through the website development, but it wasn't usually it was like, all right, let's get this the website done, and we didn't talk a lot about the
Yeah.
stuff that really matters.
Yeah. And like why I want to talk about the whole family being a family man and a business owner is because I've seen a transition in you over that last year to where I mean I got to know you or who you were just because you came out of the gate like, hey, I'm Lewis, this is who I am, and you plastered yourself all over social media relentlessly, which is what you should do, that like which was a good thing. And then you're kind of skeptical at first, like, all right, who's this guy? And then once you stick around for a while, then people start to become familiar with you and then they build comfort. And then I needed some asphalt work done, or I needed my website done. And you just seemed like the guy to go to, you're at the forefront of everything. And so, I really enjoyed working with you through that process. And, you were definitely more on top of it than I was. Um, and then I started seeing a different pattern with you happening to where you started time blocking yourself with more intention around your family. And I think you had expressed, because we'll exchange, uh, communicate through Messenger back and forth. And you had expressed, yeah, I've been basically focusing on my family more and not necessarily put the business on the back burner or stuck it on a shelf, but it was more like you realized you were headed too far in one direction.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate description?
Yeah. Well, just before you threw on the recording, I was starting down a path of kind of explaining it, and you were like, we got to catch this.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, I came out of the gate guns blazing, right? I knew where I was going, was super excited about it, super passionate about it. That's how we connected was through the Facebook groups originally, right?
Yeah.
And then 2020 November 2020, our daughter was born, and basically Lewis broke. Like I basically just broke Lewis. The business and family life and all my personal stuff came together, and it just came to a point where Lewis broke. And so 2021 was a year of stepping back a bit from social media, because at a point I didn't even really know where I wanted to go. From a business perspective, because I was starting to be all things to all people when it came to the services we offered. And I was really good at like three things, which was two things. We've expanded it out to three now, but which was websites, SEO, and now we do Google ads. But I was trying to do some Facebook ads here, some email stuff over here. Like I wanted to help people. I genuinely wanted to help people. And so I started taking on too much and not putting systems in place so that my team could do the stuff and, get all that to happen. So basically, beginning of 2021, I was like, putting out a lot of fires, dealing with a couple of clients who threatened lawsuits because I'd taken them on in the pell-mell action of late 2020. Truth be told, the business was at a point where it was growing so fast, cash flow was pretty slim, right? So I was taking on new clients.
Which is most people don't understand that until you're a business owner in that position. You're like, oh, this is a problem. This is really good, but this is a problem.
Yeah. You can be making $1 million, but if you're only taking $5 home, that's not great.
Right.
So I didn't quite understand that cycle yet. There was a bit of feast or famine, because I'd go from really hard prospecting expecting to then having to deliver because I was still very much tied into the process.
Yeah.
And so brought on some clients late 2020 that were not ideal clients for us. Outside of the, the contracting space, I was like, oh yeah, we can help you. One of them called up and was crying.
Yeah.
She was crying. They'd been through some other services and they were like, we really need help. Like their peak season was coming right up. I said, we need help sorting stuff out. I said, oh yeah, we can do it. And so we signed them on, and it turned out, I don't think I did enough research into what they needed. And then it turned out that our core values just didn't align in method of working either. And so we basically refunded them the whole, for everything and the work we did. And so that put more strain on the cash flow, right?
Yeah.
And so, it got to the point where after our daughter was born, I wasn't sleeping at night because I was up with the kids. And then I was working late because, I'd also, tie in. And the reason I started this business, I guess, to go back was so that I could be around to. Right. So
you broke, you froze just for a second there. So you could be around to what? Be a father
to help raise the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct me. Did you have children when you started the business, or did your first come after you started growing this business, Blue Crocus Solutions?
So the birth of our son was the impetus that basically it was the catalyst that drove me looking at different business ideas to leave my mechanical engineering career. Yeah.
Okay. So your son came first, and then the business was an avenue so you could be a better father.
Yes. Yeah. That was essentially, I was going to work before he was awake and coming back after, seeing him for an hour or two. And our goal has been to have 4 kids. Like that's been the roadmap all along. Our third's like a month and a half away. And so, I said, this just isn't sustainable, whether it be, appointments for the kids, as they get older, games, all of that stuff. I'm not going to be able to hold down a regular job and be able to do this and support the family. There was also some issues, the career path I was on, liked the company, but didn't see it, reaching the income goals that we needed to raise, 4 extremely hungry kids. So that was the impetus for this. And so 2020, basically I was caving in. I was running on no sleep, was stressed at work because I couldn't sleep when I went to sleep because I was dealing with, stuff with clients, and it really hits me personally. I'm getting better at looking at it from the level of, okay, this is a priority. Yeah, we're going to take care of it. But it really, really, really hit me personally, almost like a slap in the face if we weren't delivering the best service for our clients. Yeah. So that wore me down. And then, Alyssa and my relationship was getting strained because quality time is a very important part of our relationship. And so, we weren't seeing each other ever. And eventually got to the point where, some pretty ugly things that I've been carrying around for years reared their head. I hated myself at every step of the way. If anything went wrong, I just beat myself up continually for it. Things like that. And so I eventually ended up hiring someone to help me work through all of that, at Alyssa's.
Meaning Mr. Ryan Grice, or meaning you reached out to a third party like a counselor or something to help you sort through this?
Yeah, Ryan came in there, but I was meaning like a counselor, a coach. Yeah. So it got to the point where, like, Alyssa has a background in social work and psychology, and she's crazy passionate about it, and and that's why she is so excited about raising a family. Yeah. But she was having to raise 3 kids at that point. I was the biggest kid with the most problems, right? Yeah. And so we would chat into the night, but she needed to sleep too, and there was a huge emotional toll on her. And at one point she said, I think you need to get help. And that was a bit of a foreign concept to me. I grew up, I would say my dad's flatlined emotionally. Yeah. It was just like everything's fine all the time.
You just keep going and you keep pushing and don't stop. And yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so having to deal with some emotions that were, quite different than that. Yeah. Really threw me off. And then it came back to, one evening Alyssa said, like, do you love yourself? And I kind of kind of hit me, and I was like, no, everything I do, you know, at that time in my life, and then, you know, growing up, it was never good enough. There was
Yeah.
always some area for improvement, which I was like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, the pursuit of the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, let's just knock ourselves down at the knees every chance we get.
Yeah. I was
But
actually just
that became very detrimental.
you saying that, I was just having that conversation with one of the guys that works for me, and it was that of like, it's hard to take compliments because we know that we can do better. Does that make sense? Do you ever face that? You know, it's hard to take compliments because you know that there's more left on the table, which doesn't always mean that you didn't do your best job. It just means that you know you have room for improvement, which we all have room for improvement every day of our lives in every aspect. You know, if we've hit the pinnacle of everything, then we have nothing to grow towards.
Yeah,
You know,
that was huge for me. Through university, like I made some really good friends that influenced me very positively.
yeah.
And,
So
and one of them,
university for everybody in the States is college.
college, yes, yeah.
Lewis is in Canada, so small slight translation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny because university is college, and for us, community college is more of like trade school.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so college for us is more trade school.
Okay.
But that's just the terminology is a little mismatched there. But yeah, through university, I made some really good friends. And one of the guys, Brian, he was very gifted athlete, very good at school,
Yep.
and he took compliments so gracefully. And
Mm.
and I was like, man, like people would be like, you did such a good job, and you'd be like, thank you, and like genuinely appreciate it. I
Yeah.
was always taught, you know, that sort of thing led to, you know, pride comes before a fall, right?
Yep.
And so I was always, I remember having conversations with Alyssa about it. It's like when I get complimented, I'd be like, ah, shucks, you know, shut up. This isn't
Right.
an offer. This is embarrassing. Um, and I do think there's a huge element of it that I genuinely didn't think I was good. And so it was awkward to be kind of exposed that way,
Mm.
that someone thought that, and then ultimately they were probably going to find out, you know, the truth at one point or another, that there were flaws there. And so fast forward to like September, I was having a conversation with my coach, therapist, counselor, and I just looked at him. You know, we did it through Zoom. He's actually in California,
Mhm.
but I looked at him and I said, you know, Sean, for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely proud of who I am, and I genuinely can say, like, I love Lewis, and I love that. And that was such, I teared up, and I still get emotional every time I say that,
Yeah.
because it was such a weird thing for me, such an out of place thing that I never would have thought could happen. Sure, there's lots of room for improvement,
Yep.
but instead of, you know, looking at all the things that I could do wrong, or could do better, that I have done wrong, like,
Yeah.
you know, let's take today for example. There's
Yeah.
always times my schedule gets off course, or, you know, I might procrastinate a little bit and not hit my time blocking.
Yeah.
Before, that would have crushed me, and I would go into a spiral of just doing nothing, and then it just builds up into this massive thing, and then it's like, all right, let's
If I
just,
can't do everything right, I might as well do nothing.
exactly, let that
Yeah.
sit in the air for a little bit, because that is that,
Yeah.
that's the core value that I was operating on. And
Yeah.
it's crippling, because, you know, as business grew, as my responsibilities grew, as my, you know, my responsibilities to clients grew, it became more and more things that were happening.
Sure.
So now I look back, you know, I looked at Alyssa the other day, and like, I was terrified before our daughter was born, like our
Yeah.
second child. She would bring up, you know, are you excited? I was like, don't talk about it. Let's not talk about it. Let's just get through the.
I'd like to say yes, but I don't want to admit no.
Yeah. Well, I said to someone else, or it was a Facebook post. You know, it's all fine and good to say you want 2 kids, but at the core, like, I hated my role as a father.
Okay.
And I found it really got in the way of what I thought was like where this was going as a business. It was it was extremely cramping. It was cramping my style.
Yeah.
But I looked at Alyssa the other day, and sure, we have stressful days, and it's crazy around here, with 2 kids and another on the way.
Yeah.
But I have so much more on the go, and I'm so much calmer. And it's because I truly, you know, feel like I'm putting in the work when I come to the office.
Yeah.
and then I can go home and do my best as a father. Right.
Yeah. So there's, man, I like, I'm jotting down notes of things that I don't want to forget and bring up. And like, I mean, you laid a wonderful platform to build off of. And there's so much, like, I mean, we could break down separate episodes on topics of things that you've learned with just like what you just said, the last thing with, with time blocking, and it's being intentional with your time for one thing, but the way that you're saying being intentional with your time, it's almost like it's almost like a natural mode of operation now, to where being intentional with your time is a major lesson that some people need to learn. Like, obviously at one point in time, that was a major lesson that you had to learn, along with many other things. But the key principles of peak operation are just like, those aren't hidden from you. Like, just the way that you're talking, you're like, this is how I have to be. And this is in order to get B, I have to implement A, which is loving yourself and realizing that not everything can be perfect, and being intentional with your time, and, not going so far in one direction that you sacrifice another. And, like, that's just, there's, those are topics that you hear so often in the self-development realm. I think the reason that you hear them so often is because they're the hardest to implement. And it's the low-hanging fruit, because everybody deals with that, on one level or another. You almost seem like you're dealing with it on an extreme level, which is great because you've had extreme success with overcoming that, and I mean, just a side note, I'm glad that you're willing to talk about this, because that's real. That is real, that anybody at one point in time or another listening to this is going to be able to relate to, especially if they have kids. Would you agree?
I think so. And it was weird. I think I had to get to a point, the self-forgiveness had to come first, because if
Yeah.
it had been June or July of last year, yes, I was seeing progress, but I never would have wanted to tell my story, for fear that someone would have been like, oh, he says he's got it all together, but he's still falling short on some client projects. That's happening. There's still some clients that we're falling short on.
Yeah.
And so, coming to the point that, hey, if there's one person that I can help, I
Yeah.
know I needed to hear this voice, back
Yeah.
in the beginning of 2021.
Yeah.
And I did. That's how I connected with Sean originally, was I read his book. And it just, I broke down crying, because, some of his life path lined up with mine.
Sure.
Added him on Facebook, signed the contract like that next Monday.
Yeah. So that's, pause there for a moment, because it's interesting that even though you were struggling with something, still the self-improvement brought you to making big improvements. Like, it's not that you just stumbled on this. I mean, you found him because you were reading a book. Because you were reading a book means that you're trying to invest in yourself to better yourself in whatever way that might be. Like, you're open-minded for self-improvement. You know what I mean? And so you would have never, I would almost bet that you would never be at the place you're at now if you weren't already starting to, invest in yourself. And so you almost can't beat yourself up for not having everything right in the beginning, because it's part of the cycle of growing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fault in realizing that you didn't have everything perfect. There's no fault in beating yourself up that you got to a place to where you had to break. When you say Lewis broke, I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? Like, what does it look like when Lewis breaks? What breaks? How bad is it? And is it anything related to how I break? And it's just interesting how people want change, but they're not willing to work for it.
That is such a key point. And you're talking about the books there. So I've been reading since, like, I grew up, I mentioned my dad kind of flatlining, with emotion, right?
Yep.
And I saw the way that my parents raised the kids. And that was another thing that came out. I started raising the kids the way that I was raised, and I hated it. And so I
Yep.
just wanted to get away from that.
Yeah.
And so there was working through that. But since I was like 15 or 17, I've been reading books. I remember reading a book on parenting and like trying to show my parents, like, hey, this is what you're
I'll be a dad one day.
yeah. But I was trying to parent my parents to parent me better.
Oh, listen, you're not doing this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that never goes over well. But I was always reading books, and as I got into actually doing the work last year, because there was the connection, when the student was ready, the teacher appeared, Sean and I connected, all of that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
But then I got to the next thing, about a month into working with him, where it's like, okay, I started hitting another wall because I actually started to have to do work again.
Yeah.
It wasn't just learning anymore. It was like, okay, I've learned, what I need to do, and now I had to do the work. I've been reading. I keep bringing up, the fact that I've been reading for a while, but I was reading books so that the books would do the work. I wanted the books to do the work. I wanted the work that was done by the authors to just magically fix the problems in my life.
Like it's some magic formula. Like I'm going to figure out the recipe here that I can, like this is going to just unlock everything for me.
Yeah, and just sprinkle fairy dust over my life. And there's multiple books around. I'm doing, this year is kind of Operation Finish all the books that I've started. Started a lot of really good books, and then it would get to the point where it's like, write down a list of your goals, and it's like, I'll get to that later, and you kind of stop and start the next book. Because every book, you read the intro, the forward, the first few chapters of their life story, it's great, easy reading. It gets you pumped up, and then when it gets to the hard work, it's like, all right, cool, I'll come back later. If it's on audiobook, then you kind of just stop and start the next one. But it came down to, I've got to do the work. I've got to go through it and do the hard thing and embrace the suck. And that's where the growth started coming for the first time in my life. I told, I had conversations with Alyssa saying, like, this is so weird. Like, everything seems to be happening now that I'm doing the stuff that I've been avoiding for the last 20 years.
Yeah. I think as I'm listening to you talk, it's becoming so clear, and just an explanation and a description of what true self-development is, because that's a hot term in our society right now, especially among, I've started calling people high performers. There's, because of a book, I think it's like Habits of High Performers or something like that. And I started realizing, like
Mike sent it to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I started realizing that, and I'm thinking like, all right, like this is a characteristic of a certain type of person, but this characteristic is also a class of person. Like it's not all entrepreneurs or not all business owners. Like you can have, I've been a high performing person myself while working for somebody else. And so what you're doing is you're speaking to the mind of a certain type of individual, and so what I'm realizing as you're talking about this is, it's so true, because I found myself in that position of, I'm going to read this book and figure out this solution. Like I'm guaranteed because somebody told me, or because of the title of the book, like I'm going to try and solve problem X. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. And I think if you're going to start down this path, the ones that are going to be successful is when you don't quit, when you don't get that one problem solved. Self-development and personal development truly is learning for the sake of learning and being open-minded to apply it wherever it's applicable. And so when you start down this journey, you have to understand that you don't know what you're going to come up against. You don't know what you're going to learn. You don't know what you're going to have to fix. And if we stop because we don't get the immediate result or answer we want, that's not personal. That's not self-development.
No,
that's just being selfish. I mean, it's and arrogant, to be honest with you.
It comes down to, it's a form of, someone said it so elegantly. It's a form of mental masturbation. You're just, I was a self-development book junkie. I've got, like all of those shelves. Well, some of them are random books, but the top two shelves there are filled with books. I've read about one shelf of them. I've got a full year and a half of reading.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to, you can read all the books in the world, but you got to apply it, or in my case, I was reading half of a lot of books.
See, I'm different in that respect because I don't like starting something else before I finish something. So
Which is
what
also
happened?
a good quality.
Yeah, but I mean, I still, if the amount I feel like the amount of time it takes me to complete, said books front to back is still going to be relatively the same as if I were to stop a book halfway through and pick up another one, because what'll happen is I'll either lose interest or, I'll hit a wall within that book and then I'm just not interested. So then I put it on the shelf for a little while, and then it's almost like well, I can't start another one until I finish that one. And so by the time I find the motivation to force myself and sit down and engage, it's however much extra time has gone by versus if I would have just finished it, and for me, I'm still trying to find out like where is the best time for me to be open to read. I was trying to get up in the morning and I would read first thing. My mind's not awake in the morning. And as I'm finding
I
out,
found that
like,
as well.
I've got to get up, eat, go to the gym. The best time for me to read, and like when the desire is at its peak, is when I'm back from the gym, and so I've got to make sure that there's enough time in between when I'm back and when I start the workday, when everybody else shows up. Like, I need to have that block, that 15 minutes of silence before that, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. If I don't have that, I've missed my window sometimes for the rest of the day. And so for me to harness my mind and slow it down enough to truly absorb the words on a page, it's hard for me to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I was like, trying to get up early. Early morning doesn't work for me. I got to get moving ASAP, or dive right into work. Is the two things I have to do. Yeah.
Right. You gotta put your mind through some mental acrobatics before you before you slow it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to something that you said right off the bat. And so I know that you've got some business coaches and things like that that you've been involved with, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I remember you telling me that, and you were talking about running hard to build this business, and then you were talking about we started taking on clients that probably weren't clients that we should have, or we know what our top 3 facets are as far as what we should be focusing on, and then we're kind of veering off in a direction to where we weren't able to be the best for this client that we needed to be. Was there any point in time to where your coach had warned you, Lewis, like you should probably focus in this direction versus going off in that direction?
Yeah. So I think at the time, now I think it's the first time, like September, I joined Apex, and then met a couple guys in Australia, actually, who I brought on as basically one-on-one coaches. We meet with them, bi-weekly. So now is the first time that I've had someone directly, over my shoulder. Like just last week, we had a conversation. I was getting a little bit overwhelmed, and we were starting to spread out in a bunch of different directions. And he said, this is what you need to do. This is X number of websites a month, and just focus on that, and everything will flow from there. That's basically the process that we've determined.
Do you know did he give you the why, or do you know the why, or is that more so like he's just telling you what you need to do and you're just going to follow blindly?
Oh no, we've talked about the why. It's kind of bringing me back to what I already knew, but clarifying that for me.
Yeah.
And so right after that, we sold 3 websites. I sold 3 websites the next day, and since then, I'm very good when I'm laser focused, and then when I start spreading out, which I naturally tend to do, then it just starts getting too much, and then it's like nothing. Everything just slows down, and there's no forward momentum. So getting that clarity. So back in 2020. I didn't have a direct coach. I was in a couple programs, so I knew the concepts. I had been taught or picked up along the way. Focus on one thing, do one thing well, all that stuff. But I still, shiny object syndrome is real, and you want to do all the things right. You have a skill to make money, and my goal was to make money. And a kid was on the way. Cash flow was tight. All of this, so I was like, all right, here's a few $1,000s. It's gonna be awesome. We'll figure it out. And I think at the start, I was very much okay, we'll figure it out. And that worked well for me up to a point. But when
Sure.
you're scaling the I'll figure it out, you've got to be a little bit more tempered with that, or at least that's what I found.
Yeah. As sometimes the ambition can can get us a little in over our head because it, and I know for me it's a matter of challenge. Like don't put a challenge in front of me. Like I'll run head into it. I want to try to conquer this thing, and over time you start to realize, like, Kyle, there are challenges that are good for you and are not good for you. Like sometimes the challenge is to stay in your lane. Like the challenge is not to go in another lane. The challenge is to stay right where you need to be, because you're going to end up making more progress and momentum there. And then I hear in the back of my mind, like you said, the concepts that you've heard, whether in a group setting or the one-on-one things that your coach has told you, or people that have invested into you, and then you kind of give them the "I told you so" moment without actually letting them say "I told you so," because you realize, like they were right a long time ago, and it took me having to go through all of this to figure it out. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, because I think that's something that's very valid with a lot of people, is then we can beat ourselves up for not doing it perfect the first time. Dude, that's what it took for you to get from there to here. If you never learned anything, then you're going backwards. But the fact that you learned something, realize that what you just went through is what it took for you to learn this lesson.
100%.
Two thumbs up. Go do it again somewhere else.
I will. I definitely will.
Does it become easier for you to say no the more that you kind of qualify these changes out?
It does. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy I've been following up with for about a year and a half. And we finally came to an agreement, sent the contract over last week. This is just something that popped in my head as we're talking. And he messaged me, he's like, "You sure you can't do any better on the website?" And this is like the third time in our conversation. I was like, "Nope." And I don't think we're a good fit either for you. See ya.
Ooh, bam.
I worded it differently. But I said,
Yeah.
I basically said, this is the third time you've brought it up. I'm concerned. And I don't think that we're the best fit for you. If you keep bringing that up, there's something that's missing. We've gone over the value prop here.
Yeah.
I don't just pull these numbers out of thin air. I know what we need to do to make the money that we need to make to be here in 5 years when you need us.
Yeah.
And he never replied. He saw the message and never replied. But in my mind, that was a freeing moment, because it got to a point where it was like, something's off here. I want people who understand the value we bring. I don't mind having conversations about how to make something affordable, payments or whatnot. But it just rubbed me the wrong way, and I've experienced clients like that before, and I said, no, I'll pass up 5-10 grand, no problem, for the bandwidth freed up emotionally.
Yeah. Well, and affordable doesn't always mean lesser value. Affordable could mean like what you and me did. We broke it up into 3 payments. You know what I mean? Like lump sum, I wasn't willing to do and didn't have the cash flow on hand to do it in a lump sum, but I still know what I needed. And you said, all right, well, we can break it up into 3 payments over the course of the next 3 months. Perfect. I can do that. Like that's not decreasing your value, but it's making it affordable for me, which is just problem solving. Easy.
Exactly.
I'm going to have you say this because it goes through all of our minds, but like, was there a little hesitancy in or pushback in telling the guy no, or were you 100% confident that this is what I need to do?
There's always a little hesitancy, because we have revenue goals. I'm pushing for some pretty like 5x revenue goals from last year, which is pretty crazy. We did a fifth of our revenue in December after getting on board with these guys in Australia, and really honing in. So I'm pushing for some aggressive revenue goals. So yeah, it's like, it's a little hard. So I have a hunch, and I usually shoot it over to Ryan. I shoot him a screenshot of the message, and he's like, "Boot him." So we bounce each other off that way, because we in the moment, there's a certain amount of the hunt. I get it's a hunt with sales. I'm there to help and whatever, but it is. there's a certain something about closing a deal and bringing more revenue in and helping another customer that
Right.
is fun, and that I crave. And so having
Well,
Ryan to bounce that off, I'm not sure if I would have done it entirely on my own.
I mean, that's extremely wise and a very humble and smart move, because you as the owner and leader of this whole ordeal, you think differently. You think critically in every different area, different than Ryan is going to. And so sometimes what that causes us is overthinking out of fear or overthinking out of ambition or whatever that means. And so I'll do the same thing with my guys, to where I recognize myself in a point to where, all right, Kyle, like you can't easily make this decision. Why is that? Let's see what somebody else thinks, because at this point in time, they have a clearer overall picture and they're not as invested in you. So they can just generally just call it for what it is. Read the right, just take it for face value. When I can't do that, I then do the same thing, hand it up. Hey, what do you think? Okay, I'm gonna trust your judgment.
And it could be even, you're not right in the direct minute where, the smell of blood is on your tongue. And I don't,
Right.
that's not how I do sales, but you know what I mean? Like you
No,
feel like you're
I do. Yes. And some of it is, I just need confirmation that I'm making the right decision, because I don't have 100% confirmation inside me right now. The confirmation sometimes comes after you make the move. You make the move knowing that this is what you need to do. You can't overthink it, because you'll think yourself right out of the process. And so you do what you need to do, even though you don't have 100% confirmation for whatever reason, because you're the business owner. Once you do it, then you get the sigh of relief after it's been done. And 9 times out of 10, like you just said, you get confirmation that, yeah, that was the right thing to do, because of then the aftermath of that transaction between you and him. Whether it was he didn't respond, or you leave yourself open to, oh, I did not get myself into a can of worms here. I didn't open that.
Yeah.
So I think that's, more people need to realize that they're not alone with these things, because something with being involved in the personal development era, you more times hear what you need to do. And if all you hear is what you need to do, you start thinking, I'm doing everything wrong. You less times hear what you're doing right, for one thing, that everybody's human, for another thing, nobody's perfect. And so I think it's important to just remind yourself and other people that, look, you're not alone. Just because this didn't come as easy to you as it was spoken by somebody else doesn't mean that something's wrong here.
Yeah. And next time it'll be easier and go more smoother, right? Because you learn the lesson.
Right. So in pulling, let's talk about changing your involvement as far as pushing the business goes, because your actions and your time placed has then it's different. You're not spending as much time on social media, you're not spending as much time in your office. Obviously, I feel it's a given that your family is going to benefit from that also. And you've expressed that to me, like, I love what I'm doing. This has been so great. Has your business picked up and been a lot more, I guess, forward directed, if that's even the right way to say that? Because I mean, with being intentional and pulling back from your business, have you noticed it actually going further than if you were to be hovering over it like a helicopter?
Yeah, no, I think I'm still hovering a little bit, in full transparency. I'm still hovering a little bit of the helicopter, and really starting to move from that. But it's more, the biggest thing for me was in my mind. When I'm with the family, I'm with the family, and the problems can wait till I hop back into the office, or the lab as I refer to it. When I'm back in the lab, that's when I can worry about that. And pulling back from social media a bit was, social media, it's something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the positive feedback of it. I enjoyed what it did for the bottom line of the business.
Yeah.
But it also becomes a trap of a positive feedback loop where you're just like on social media. It turns into busy work, kind of like checking emails. And so I actually took 2 months off of social media to kind of, detox a little bit and get really clear on where I was going, what I was doing. And then it slowly has ramped back up.
Did you find that hurt your exposure online when you did that? Or didn't you really notice a big deal?
I think it did. I think it did, but it didn't in the sense that it was when I took the hiatus, I had kind of been unsure of direction. So I wasn't pushing a particular message, addressing a certain type of person. I was kind of got to the point where I was just sharing stuff because I was sharing stuff. I was at the point where it was like 2 or 3 posts a day. I knew I needed to do that. I was just feeding the engagement machine, which was inauthentic, and ultimately people don't engage with inauthentic content. And so it was kind of going downhill there. And I said, I'm scrounging for posts. I don't have anything to give because I don't have anything. Like I've got to fill my cup back up, and then come back. So I said, I'll take a month off. It ended up, I was pretty slow to turn the volume back up. When I joined Apex, I had a very clear direction, and that's kind of, build the machine that Ryan Stewman lays out is, social media is a key part of it. I enjoyed being off. There was a part of my brain that didn't have to be searching for the next thing, but now it's a different focus. It's, I'm more vulnerable in my posts. As a core, I still have my memes that I rely on.
Right. Of course.
But as a whole, it's heading in a whole different direction, and is much more, okay, I'm just going to make a post and then jump back off and I'll engage when I can, rather than living on social media.
And if you're not submersed in your business and you're not, I think the better word that came to mind versus hovering over it is smothering it. If you're not smothering your business with yourself and you're not fully submersed in it, then the time that you are involved, you're thinking more critically. You're making more critical decisions that are more aligned with your target versus just, like you said, I'm just doing stuff just to do it. I don't really know why. And so that is why we need to pull back from our businesses sometimes. That's why we need to have balance. So because, you're going to fully submersing yourself in one area is going to make that suffer because you're too involved. On the other hand, your family's suffering because you're not involved at all. So it's a win-win on both aspects. So, you've got 2 kids now then, right? And third one on the way?
Third one in about a month and a half. Yeah.
Okay. So, I did. I thought I saw something about it, and it's coming along.
It's real. It's real news.
It's real. So I'm assuming you're a lot more excited initially about this third one than, the anticipation apprehension of the second one. Is that correct?
I was in denial for Zaley. Let's push it off till the last minute. And now it's like, I'm excited. We were just talking about, what it's going to look like, and I've started to put some plans in place. But it's a whole different ball game for sure.
Well, and I feel like, and so, because we're on 2 different sides of the spectrum. Okay. You're married with soon to be 3 kids. I'm not married with no kids. And so I'm able to be, I have the time to grow the business as much as I want. I still have to understand things like when to pull away, and I'm realizing now that, like, look, I can't grow a business and be fully submersed in it and build a lifestyle to where, let's say I do meet somebody and I do want to get married one day, that I don't know how to function that, because I've never taught myself these lessons. And so just seeing you go through this, even from the little bit we've interacted, it's not like we've talked in depth about this, but just seeing you put those things into practice is encouraging for me, because it's like, man, he sees enough value in that to dedicate time to change his MO. I need to take that to heart. I need to pay attention. And if he's doing it, then it's okay for me to do it too.
No, I think there, you can have it all. You can balance all of it, but there is an element of, you need to be able to look at, the fact that you've got 10 years with the family.
Mhm.
Like I can keep this business going the way it is right now. But I've got 10, 18 years and then the kids are gone.
Mhm.
I have so many years after those 10, 18 years that I can go whole hog into this.
Yeah.
So to pace myself, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so, Alyssa was very grounding in that, saying, hey, you can have these goals 5 years out,
Yeah.
but the kids are going to be completely different in 5 years. You're not going to see their first steps. You're not going to see their first words. You're going to miss such key moments.
Yeah.
And that was pretty, I didn't really hear it at the time, but as I got to, kind of get through the shell of emotion, I guess it was like, man, like that's kind of sad. Like I see things with Zaylee that I never got to see with Everett because I was just so focused when I was around Everett, I was on my phone. To the point where, I've talked about this before. He was saying, Daddy, put your phone down. Like it was tough, right? A
Yeah.
tough lesson to learn.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have a lot of time after to start a bunch of other businesses too when the
Yeah.
kids aren't around.
Yeah.
So do this well.
Yeah.
And I think the perspective shift of, yeah, I can't go to all the shows and all the group gatherings and whatever. I'm trying to think of the word there. You know what I mean? But I can't fly
Yeah.
out to
The
every.
expos and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you're going to get 20 years down the road and not feel like you missed out on something.
No, and that's something I'm so at peace with. It's like those expos and meetups are going to be there. I truly know what I need to do right now as a business owner. Yes,
Yeah.
networking is incredible. I'm there's part of me that misses it, but there's also a part that's very clear on where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. And it's just, it's extremely encouraging for, people like me that don't have a family. And I think that people that do have a family need to hear it as well. And even there can be some lessons to be learned from Alyssa's standpoint. Look, this is how you encourage your husband. You don't need to come down on him for it, but point it out and let him make the decision and be encouraging. And that's just, it builds a strong relationship all over the place, and then, so, you've got Ryan to delegate some things off to, and it's a cycle. It's an all-inclusive thing. So
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's been fun to see it. It's been fun to see it come together, and it's certainly a relief to not be stuck in that, stuck on the hamster wheel, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I think we could talk a long time about a lot of different things, and there's stuff that I wrote down that we didn't get to, but that's okay. Lewis, thank you very much for coming on this. I'd like to do it again sometime. And again, I think it's super encouraging. I know it's super encouraging for me, and I know that it will be to the listeners as well. So this has been great, exchanging, I don't want to say favors, but the last time that, we did this, I was on your podcast, and now this time you're on mine. So
no, the pleasure is mine, my friend. I mean, every time I talk about it, I get a little bit more clear on my journey. Like I learn things from me telling the story. And it's like, that's, there's something about telling it that helps you process it too.
Yeah. Well, and the story is perfect because I really want to build strength through vulnerability with this podcast. Like this is real life. This isn't fluff. This is, bringing up what you're not proud of, bringing up, what could be vulnerable, because it's relatable to everybody. If you're perfect in every situation, in every aspect, you're also a liar to yourself and everybody else around. So, I think it will resonate with more people on that aspect. So, all right, I will let you go. Thanks again, Lewis. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll see you later.
All right. Cheers.